We have 2 hours, and I will try to leave about half an hour at the end for questions. My journey through design, this is too dark. No. Actually, this is okay. For the beginning, it's okay. So I'll tell you my journey after then. Perfect, this is perfect. Imagine this is you, this dot is you, and this is a lecture I prepare usually for corporations. I am very fortunate to deal with large global corporations that are wondering what's next and what is the next big idea. So I've been doing this for 25 years in this domain of foresight, and by lecturing to a lot of organizations, I'm learning a great deal, just like I learned a great deal in the last day and a half. This is you, and this is what's happening to you if you are not paying attention. And I'm using in this case a very famous brand, which is 20th Century Fox. It's fine. Fine. So essentially, this is what's happening to every large corporation right now. The public, the consumer, the user, the prosumer, the people using open source code, in this case YouTube, are destroying brands, or they think they are improving brands. Essentially, we live in an emerging technology environment in which you or the corporation are being totally transformed by things you don't control if you don't know what they are happening. So why is this happening? Well, I've been using this photograph of my son for 21 years now. This is Sasha when he was 19 months old. And at 19 months of age, I took him to my office. I put him on a desk where I was taking photographs, my photo studio. And immediately he started playing with his balls. I cut this photograph nicely, and I'm trying to analyze why is he playing with his balls, and the conclusion was because he can. This is Sasha today, the founders of Google. This is Sasha, the founder of Facebook. He created Facebook because he could. Facebook is in the top 20 richest companies on the planet today. Started by a 21-year-old because he could. This is what's transforming the economic system right now. And Facebook is not a product. Facebook is a behavior platform. Steve Jobs was Sasha. Steve Jobs was a typical example of somebody who could. This is Elon Musk. Elon Musk single-handedly is transforming the automotive industry, the solar panel industry, the transportation industry. He doesn't need any books, he doesn't need any lessons, he just listens to his inner will, and out of that will, he creates a new world. These are the designers of today. So what do they have, and what do they work with? Well, they work with human motivation, they work with the manifestation of motivation, which is behavior, and they work with business capability. These 3 things combined create what I call a behavior space, or the space for action. This is a classic example of a behavior space. This is not a phone. This was never a phone, it was always a radio. This is a behavior space. The multiple behaviors you can engage in with this product and other products like it. So I'm not talking about the iPhone, I'm talking about any kind of smartphone. It's unlimited how many behaviors this product has released. Behaviors we never thought we had. Is Tumblr used in Mexico? How about Tinder? I know you don't use it, but in case you are lonely, you will discover a genius application, okay? Which is exactly human nature. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So, why was Tinder produced? Because we could. Snapchat, my son is on Snapchat, he's 21 years old, he has 48,000 Snapchats, like incredible number, 56 a day. While he's doing this, because he can, he's not doing something else. Multiply this at the size of the economic system, and you understand that consumption has totally changed, totally transformed. We are not consuming anymore goods and services, we are consuming behaviors. So that's why I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Behavior Space, trying to understand this new economic system, which I call the behavior economy. The behavior economy today is twice the size of the traditional economy. It might not be the case in Mexico, but I'm generalizing with world numbers, and you'll see some numbers. Twice the size means in terms of involvement, and 3 times in terms of market capitalization. This is a significant thing, because it's not just a couple of guys in a garage playing with computers anymore. So the behavior economy is asking corporations and design schools and anybody teaching anything connected to planning for the future, this fundamental question: what has already happened that has yet to be fully manifest? So this is a very simple question. Claudio said I deal with the future. I deal with the consequences of the present in the future. So I deal with the question, what has already happened? Tinder has already happened, so I deal with Tinder. I'm trying to understand, what does that mean? Facebook is happening, Instagram is happening, Amazon one-click is happening, Uber is happening. All of these things are transforming society, and somebody needs to connect the dots. So this is what I decided to do, as I said 25 years ago when internet was in its beginnings. The expectation from design in this context is totally different than it was since I became a designer in 1970s. So in 1980, the expectation was differentiation. Let's make it different. We were not part of the decision group that said this is the product we need. No, we wanted to make it different, so we sell the same product our competitors were selling, but people will enjoy it, like it, find aesthetic value, and so on. In 1990s, we started to design experiences. What does the thing do? What does the thing do for you? What can you do to the thing? So I wrote a book called Tool Toys, trying to understand the phenomenon of the Swatch watch, which is not a watch. It's a watch with personality. Well, that's different than just a watch. So I noticed in 1990s we are buying things no longer for the function, but for the emotion. Am I too fast? Good. If I'm not fast, I don't think, okay? So, so I have to think in the same tempo. In 2000, when my life, professional life changed considerably because I discovered a new entry into strategy through a design capability called foresight, foreseeing the future from the elements of the present, we started to explore possibilities. So the question became a very simple question: what could be possible? So you'll see this question many times today. And the question, what could be possible, is different than the question, what if? So what if is an imaginative question. You are imagining what if based on a simple thing. For example, an imaginative question I asked for Motorola. What if, Motorola is a communications company, right? And I was dealing with communication in abnormal situations. In other words, let's make other things communicate, not just people. So the question became, what if my toilet could speak? So, what do you think you will ask your toilet? What do you think will be the first question people will ask their toilet? So I did some research, because that's what we do. We do research. Okay, why do we need to know these things? Because there is a number 1 question by default, number 2 question by default, number 3 question by default. The number 1 question by default that you ask your mirror is, am I healthy? The number 1 question you ask your toilet is this normal? So, if I'm a Motorola, which is a communication company, the next level of engineering is very simple. Self-diagnosing toilet that talks to the insurance company, talks to the health provider, distributes information on various devices, etc. What if my toothbrush could speak? Electric toothbrush. How many of you have an electric toothbrush? 2 minutes a day you are putting a motor in your mouth. Voluntarily. And you are essentially fishing for bacteria. You think you are washing your teeth, but you are essentially taking bacteria out of your mouth. That bacteria can be analyzed, and you can have front-end health delivery in the home by just using the information your toothbrush already has. This is 2000, okay? 16 years ago. All of these things I'm telling you about exist right now. They may not be yet released, but they exist. So we are exploring possibility. In other words, we are exploring possibility based not on stuff that we can imagine, because we cannot imagine something we don't know. And you'll see today, the title of my lecture is Beyond Imagination. The imagination is limited to what you know. If I say the Statue of Liberty, you can see it in your mind right now, right? If I say Frugal, do you see anything? Frugal, doesn't matter what. It's something you don't know. If you don't know it, you can see it. That's the point. So it's not about imagination anymore. It's about the difference between Picasso and Salvador Dali. Both of them sitting in front of the same bottle of wine, they will draw it in a different way. What will be that difference is what the thing will inspire. So it's about inspiration. The data points are the same. It's how you are inspired to combine them. Steve Jobs had the same data points as Bill Gates, but his inspiration made him create the MP3 player known as the iPod, and then the phone, and so on. So, the current assignment for design, current, I mean the last 10 years, and continuing, is twofold. Leveraging technology into behavior platforms. First behavior platforms, then business platforms. So Facebook's obsession was not to make money. Still it is not. Facebook's obsession was to give you value. More value they give you, more they grow, more intense your expectation from Facebook is, and more you go to Facebook. How many of you are on Facebook? Not too many. Are you on another platform? I don't know. The second one is develop strategies for product and service platforms. So all of a sudden, the definition of industrial design changed about 7 years ago, including the definition used by the International Council of Industrial Design, which uses the word strategy and innovation in the definition of industrial design, and doesn't call it industrial design anymore. Our students graduate as design strategists, because we cannot justify the word industrial anymore. Because software manufacturing is industrial, but it's not an industrial process in the way we looked at industry with presses and welding machines and so on. So, in this whole new environment, we now have to create new value. New value means, what if my toilet could speak? Because this is a capability of an object, that of being aware of stuff that we never had before. And as you'll see today, I'll show you a lot of trends happening right now. So new value starts with first understanding what value is. Value is not money. Value is not profit. Value is the difference you make in the world. How different are you? What difference do you make in people's lives? The value of, let's say, Mona Lisa or Picasso painting, Demoiselle d'Avignon, most expensive abstract painting at a time, or Picasso painting, $140 million. How can you justify the value of a piece of canvas of that size? Paint plus canvas plus hourly rate doesn't equate 140 million. So value has to be something more than labor plus material. Has to be symbolic value, historic value, reference value. What does it mean to me, value? So those are various ways of looking at value. What is the value of Facebook? You cannot evaluate that company based on traditional ways of measuring stuff. They have no inventory. Well, they have computers, they have servers, they have probably some of the biggest data centers, but they do not have traditional measures for this. They don't measure you as a one entity, they measure you as an entity in the course of time. How deeply are you involved with Facebook? So, because of the changes and because of this very cheap entry to the market of products and services, we have something called strategic dissonance. And this is a term coined by Intel in 1996. Intel was trying to sell microchips to companies, and companies will say, why do I need microchips? And Intel will say, because we have something called the digital revolution. What digital revolution? It doesn't affect my business, I make ice cream. And then they will say, we have something called the internet. What? I don't care about the internet. Just so you know, a lot of us here were born before the internet. And life was completely different, okay? So, after the internet, we discovered that we actually need the internet. So Intel says, great, I'm going to sell chips. And they can't sell chips because the boardroom of these corporations have very serious business people who don't understand why will anybody in their right mind spend any time on a screen connected to other people. Because it makes no sense, according to what they believe. So then Intel CEO Andy Grove develops this diagram explaining to executives what's happening. And the diagram looks like this. This is the emerging present. That's what's happening right now. And this is what you need to know to compete and what you need to do. And then we have new sources of value, like Tinder, Snapchat. It's valuable for whatever reasons it's valuable. And then you need new business models. You have to realize most companies do not have a business model. Most companies operate on a business plan, which is different. It's the how we're going to make money, not why we're going to make money. In other words, not why we're going to make money, because we make a difference in people's lives. So, the subject for today is how do we map the present? How do we understand its core values? In other words, how do we take the visible and make it intelligible, make sense out of it, give it meaning? And then what distinctive competence do I need as an organization or individual or student or designer? I transform myself exactly like this 4 times because we have to transform. And what new business models do we need today? So my first subject is the emerging present. Now, a lot of you know what's going on, right? Or you don't. Or you think you do, but you don't have any formal way of keeping track of what's going on. So I subscribe to a couple of trend publications online. I subscribe to Google alerts on specific terms. But instead of just looking at them in the morning, whatever I find interesting and new, I map it. I put it on a map as a dot, as a data point, as a thing I'm going to think about in the future. Corporations don't do this. Corporations hire me to do this. And then when I go and teach them what I've learned, they don't believe it because they didn't do it. So I have a very interesting thing. Very much like me and you right now. Like, what is this? This is not real because I haven't done it, so it doesn't affect me. So we're going to talk about sources of value, distinctive competence, and business models. So, what's the present? Well, the present is this behavior economy. It's actually the rise of the behavior economy. How do we know the rise of the behavior economy is happening? We look at how much money the behavior economy is consuming, how much energy the behavior economy is consuming. How many of you think that Google consumes more electricity than Ford Motor Company? Do you think is it true that Google consumes more electricity? No way. Have you ever seen how Google works? Have you ever seen how many servers Google has? Well, just imagine, you type in Google, Michael Jackson, and boom, you have thousands of, how do you think that happens? That happens with enormous energy consumption, enormous. So enormous, they are taking it offshore, they're putting it on boats. So enormous, they have data centers in Lithuania where it's cheaper. So enormous that they go to Estonia. So enormous that they have to get solar things. It is an enormously costly, energy-wise thing to run a data center. But people don't think of it because data is immaterial. And people don't see it as a consumer. It's extremely expensive. The most expensive thing to do is to mine for bitcoins. It takes enormous amount of computing power and gigantic computers. That's why you don't have bitcoins, because they're very expensive to get, okay? So the rise of the behavior economy is taking over. I was saying in the past that we live in these two economic systems. One which is real, which is the behavior economy, and one which is inherited, which we think it still has value. In other words, we still think automotive corporations will exist in 20 years. Maybe in some parts of the world, definitely not North America. And how do you know this? Well, take a look at what Tesla did just last week. Take a look at what Uber did last week. They sent a bus, a truck with beer without a driver for 120 kilometers. Uber wants to, in the next 5 years, to ship everything with Tesla cars in the middle of the night. Did you hear that? They want a Tesla car to drive itself, to be Uber without a driver while the driver sleeps. So they want the car to make money for the user. Now, this is the beginning of a revolution in thinking about cars as an income generating thing. And this guy has billions of dollars to do it. And people love it too. So, the first model is consumption and production. I make it because you need it, and then at one point I'm going to make a bit more, and then you say I have too much, and then I'm going to advertise it, and I'll say mine is better than this guy, and then you're going to say I forget yours. I like it cheap. Oh no. The best the men can get, Gillette. You can't shave with big. You will never get a woman if you shave with big. But if you shave with Gillette, this is so they try, branding starts to explode the product function, which should have been enough from the beginning. But what's happening right now? People are starting to understand how bankrupt this model can get. So, consumption and production starts with a physical footprint, a factory. You make products, then you make services. Products are very expensive. They entail a lot of risk, materials, supply chain, dealerships, all that kind of stuff. To grow that kind of company, you have to come up with more products. So you see how in this world, a designer is very happy. And this world, unfortunately, is called China right now, Korea, and maybe Japan. Not as much as before. Definitely not Canada. We stopped making products about 10 years ago, including American products for American factories. So the growth is based on scaling up. Scaling up has a lot of risk. And you scale up, you have the monster like GM. General Motors was the largest company at one point, and they went bankrupt. The reason they still exist is because the American government saved them. And that's something that people don't connect. Why do these companies still exist? Because your tax dollars, my tax dollars actually, paid for it. So, multiplying operations, scaling up, those are the tricks of expanding this production and consumption model. Today, actually yesterday, because I didn't check today, General Motors was valued at $51 billion. Do you know how much Apple is valued at? 620. So Apple is 12 times more expensive than General Motors, and they make 14 products, some of which are headsets this size, which they recall. They are not releasing. The Bluetooth one is not working yet. So the second is the behavior platform model. Growth through transformation, meaning transforming every day what you do, and you are the product. So the platform is small. Tumblr has the same 100 employees and the same physical size today as it had at the beginning. Facebook grew a bit, but not that much. What grows on Facebook is the network, is the number of people, is the hours of engagement. Facebook today is the largest marketplace on the planet, 1.6 billion people. We never had anything in the history of humanity of that size. So, Facebook market cap yesterday, 382 billion. This is a company that was started by a guy that wanted to get laid. Just so we know. So, because he could, I hope it's okay to speak about this humanity in a school, okay? I normally swear a lot, so right now I'm not swearing because I don't know how culturally this fits, so I'm gonna not swear today. But if you watch these guys like Steve Ballmer from Microsoft or people in Silicon Valley, they swear constantly without meaning it. It's just a way of expressing themselves to show sincerity. Anyway, so moving from analog to digital, it's not called change. It's actually called transformation. So change is when I take something from my pocket like this, a coin, and put it the other side, and it disappeared. Magic. That's a change of condition. That's not what we need to do when we take an organization from what it is, IBM 10 years ago, and what it has become, IBM today. I don't know how many of you know what IBM does today, but IBM today has no connection to IBM in 2000 or 2005. They make no computers. They are a pure data company. They have a project called IBM Smarter Planet, which I recommend you look into. 16 projects affecting every single aspect of your life, and each one full of design opportunity. So, a fundamental revision of direction is what we need in design, in corporations, beyond imagination. The imagination, as I mentioned before, results in change, because you imagine a different condition of something. And a very good example is grape juice. Grape juice, this human being says, oh, look, grapes. Eats the grapes, and then the human being says, oh, look, I can squeeze the grapes. Oh, good. Excellent. But that doesn't require much more than that. However, making wine or making grappa is a different plateau it's transforming this condition into a different condition. So transformation affects the nature of the thing. So we are changing the nature. The nature of data in 2016 is different than the nature of data in 1980. We had data in 1980. We used data. It was punched on a card. We had data in 1991. We had data in 2000. It was used in a completely different way. Today, is it used as music, image, text, feelings, drawings, heartbeats, breathing, all that kind of stuff. So transformation, therefore, affects the present, the structure of the present, because the structure of the present is organizations serving people, serving other organizations. So remove one thing, or change one, or transform one thing, every single thing will change by transforming itself. So take grapes and make wine, you're on a different plateau. The two questions, what if is imagination, what could be possible is inspiration. So this is much more a lecture about being inspired and seeing what is not there than being imaginative and applying what's here today to old models of thinking, to old products, and so on. What we are after is changing the outcome. Changing the outcome means a new experience. To give you an example of changing the outcome, humanity has been always very good at adapting new technology to old frameworks. So the old framework was mayonnaise. You make mayonnaise, right? You make it by hand. Then somebody invents an electric motor. Let's put this on an electric egg beater. So now you make it with electricity. You still make mayonnaise. The egg doesn't know. So the thing is, how do you go to a different level of what could be possible exclusively because of this technology exists? So look at a company that understood the whole thing, from personal computers to life experiences. Apple changed its name to Apple Corporation in 1997. That was actually the biggest announcement they make when they announced the iPhone. The first announcement was remove the word computer from the name of the company. They were the largest retailer a couple of years ago of music. Imagine that, a company that used to make computers. Revenues, 62 billion, 108, 183, 224. These are spectacular numbers, and I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the value Apple has in our life. Because if it didn't have value in our life, you wouldn't buy, or I wouldn't buy their products. Why are they so relevant? Because they are playing four distinct business roles. They are creators. These are called business model archetypes. How do I extract revenue? Four different ways. They are creators of things, landlords, distributors, and brokers. Apple did not have a distribution network. They didn't have their own stores. Now they have some of the best stores in the world. In Toronto, where I live, they are building a new store, 4 stories in the center of Toronto, of an experiential Apple, or a transformative experience, they call it. So we don't know what the store will be like. It opens in 2 years. But it will be unlike any other thing. They are redesigning all their stores. So the market cap yesterday, 633, today is going to be a bit lower because people don't like Apple for a couple of days. But that fluctuates always. So the new context for design is this context I call the data transfer behavior space. Data transfer because all of you have data right now. And the important thing is not that you have it, but you can transfer it to one another. And that creates opportunity. The way we map it, I typically take a behavior and a technology, because the technology creates behavior. So digital media creates a network society. A network society is unlike any other society before it, because society evolves through the transmission of culture. If transmission of culture is slow, like it was in the past, like I need a boat, I need a wheel, I need people to go travel, Marco Polo, to come back and tell me stories, that took 35 years. Then he has to write a book, that takes another 35 years. Then the book has to be distributed. So the transmission of culture was extremely slow before, and that's why we have inequality in the way countries developed. Today the transmission of culture is less than 1/10 of a second. So this builds capabilities, products, services, trends. So this map is the current map of where we are right now. How many of you in this room have tried YouTube 360? How was it? How was it? Interesting? Do you think that's the future of virtual experience? Not yet. All right, but when that thing becomes maximized, meaning the price is low, the content is gigantic, and all of a sudden you don't want to watch any kind of other movies, or have any other experience, or travel in any other way. So I will draw this map just so you see what it contains. So these are the dots I'm trying to connect. These are the dots I'm trying to connect on behalf of clients. These are the dots design has to connect today, because each one of these things connected in a different way could be a different opportunity. So the number one cause of failure in most organizations is the inability of people to understand this whole thing. They are not able to visualize it, and secondly, they are not able to understand its meaning, which means they need translators of meaning. And you have the whole field of design thinking called sense making, where people are trying to make sense of this kind of stuff. What does it take to make sense? You need to read philosophy. So that's, again, a totally different new capability. So without visualization, the system is abstract. In the emerging present, what we need to do is understand what the thing is. And the number one understanding is, this was last year the most successful product of all time. And you are shaking your head. But think of it, this is not about the stick. This is about the self. It is called a selfie stick, but if I didn't want to photograph myself, I wouldn't buy a selfie stick. So now we have to understand that it's us. So the internet, therefore, so it's about the self. The internet is not a technology. That's the first thing you need to understand from the point of view of the behavior economy. The internet is a behavior. Every single place you go to behave, not just to be. You are being there to be active, to learn, to be curious, to click, to find, and so on. So, multiple behaviors on this platform. Behavior is the only goal. That's another interesting thing that only toys have in common with the internet. The only reason for a toy to exist is for you to behave with it. So, play and design are much more connected now than ever, because curiosity is embedded in play, and so is in the internet and Internet of Things. It's a platform for value delivery, because it's rooted in intrinsic motivation. You don't go to the internet for extrinsic reasons, because somebody's forcing you. You go there from your own will, your own desire to learn. And it generates, because of that, intrinsic value. So every moment you are spending in this, whatever you are surfing, has intrinsic value for you because it starts with intrinsic motivation. The Internet of Things, the thing that's coming up right now, with every object and every place being connected, is also a behavior, because it's not about objects being connected. It's about how this connection will change you. And how else would we want to address life once we know everything can talk to everything else? And if you look at the surface of things, you say everything connected to everything else. Well, what do we do? What do we do? Well, it's actually very simple. There is a model of which we are a part, in which everything is connected to everything else. And that model is called nature. And the tree is connected to the plant, and the plant to the bee, and the bee to the air, and so on. And everything is connected. And if one thing happens to one thing, everybody knows, not in the same time, but in the course of time. So people connected to people they care about through objects that are connected. That's what the Internet of Things is. Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, all of them are intrinsic platforms for the presentation of self in everyday life. They will not exist if you didn't want to introduce yourself to the world. So if you examine it from that perspective, there are a couple of really good books you can read. One is The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life, 1954. Oh man. This is, one second. So what are the motivating trends right now? I mentioned you carry data with you, so you are enabled because you have enabled objects. So you have an enabled space in here because you have internet, and then you have enabled people. So these three tactical agents, people, space, object, are now connected. There is no question in my mind that in the future, very near future, places will have a Facebook page. And places will talk to other places on Facebook. And you will think, why would they do that? And the answer was at the beginning of the presentation, because they could. And because they will exchange information about various things, about you, about objects, about the role that you played in this space so that the other space can help you. So these are the services we can start thinking about when we think of location awareness, when a place or object knows you are there. The social Internet of Things is the thing that's happening right now, in which not only these things will be connected, but they will play a social role. They will chat. So there are lots of chat bots on the internet. You think they're real people, but they're actually programs. There are lots of blogs written by bots. You have now another new thing in the subscription economy, essentially people subscribing to everything. Uber is a subscription. We can subscribe to food, delivery of entertainment. Netflix is a subscription economy example. You are subscribing to entertainment. But you can subscribe in the future to many, many more things. The Internet of Me, which means I want to be reflected in every single thing, which means for designers, granular value. So value not for everybody, value for one individual. How do I know what this individual wants? That individual has a phone. That phone is the #1 filter of their music, communication, keywords, feelings, heart rate. In my case, my heart rate is, my watch measures my heart rate every 2 minutes. I'm going to check it after the lecture, see how I did. So, BlogJet, which is objects that blog. Then you have social robots, which are now about 21 social robots. Google works on 6 of them right now. A social robot right now is any robot that doesn't vacuum. So it tells stories. The #1 robot is Siri. Siri got really good. #2 is Jibo. Have you seen Jibo? Jibo is phenomenal, but doesn't walk. So Jibo doesn't move, but has eyes, takes photographs, knows everybody in the home. A really powerful one is Echo, Amazon, which now introduced Echo in cars. And Echo, so imagine you have in your apartment or condo or house a device that knows every single thing you do at every single moment, and every question you have about everything. That's the ultimate filter of designing value for granular users. So, when I show this stuff to companies, I ask them, what do you see? Or design schools. What do you see? Like, what are these signals meaning to you? Because every one of them is a question. Because the objects that we designed are answers to questions. So to give you an example, this is the answer to the question, how do I support above the ground any object I want? This is the answer to the question, how do I carry hydration on an individual level? This is the answer to the question, how do I support the human body comfortably above ground? This is the answer to the question, how do I change slides? See, if I don't have a question, I don't have a product. Question is the concept generator, the product is the concept, and every other product is a copy of that concept. So that's a short story of design. So every signal is a question. So what does it mean? Any part, Goethe said, is a manifestation of the whole, not just a component. So here is the part. Christopher Columbus. He lands, and the Taino people here, glorious people, very welcoming, very warm, don't see any danger in the guy. They look at his things like swords and symbols they don't know, and they had the opportunity to map this guy, to figure out if he wasn't a loser, he wouldn't be here, essentially. Or if he wasn't about to steal from me, he wouldn't be here. Or if he wasn't a bad navigator, he wouldn't be here, right? How did he get there? He got lost. Where was he going? Not to India. India did not exist at the time. The country was called Hindustan. So now I'm going to teach you something that will blow your mind, okay? The fact that he went to India, he called these people what? What, Indians? No, he called them una gente in Dios. A people in God. They were living in God. They were living in nature. So he wrote in his journal, una gente en Dios. I don't know how to pronounce it, but you get the idea. It's in Dios, right? So that's how the thing became India. Very beautiful story. There is a whole book if you want. Anyway, the bottom line is with the Taino people who asked this guy, where do you come from? And they said, I came from this boat. What boat? So just like Freugal, I told you a thing you don't know. They can't see the boat because they've never seen a boat that size. So you cannot possibly see, and the closer it gets, the less you see. Because there are many, many complicated things, right? Imagine a flying saucer landing right now here. We won't be able to see it because there are so many things. So the Behike, the wise people, the trickster of the village says to this Taino chief, close your eyes and I will describe the boat to you. So close your eyes, I'm going to make room in your mind for a boat of that size. So how do I make room in your mind? Well, I'm going to say, do you know the boat you go fishing with? Do you know when you go to the wedding in the next village and we get a bigger boat? Do you know when we get 16 boats in a row, we go to this village thing? Now open your eyes, that's the boat. That's exactly what Steve Jobs did when he introduced the iPhone. He was talking about a phone because you know what a phone is. He wasn't talking about a window to the universe, right? So a trickster is a medium into the possibility. That's where this question, what could be possible? And all my clients and all your future clients will essentially look around and say, what boat? What boat? And your job is to tell them, close your eyes and I'll describe the boat to you. Which is, I will tell a story, which is called a scenario in design language, in which people, objects, and places in the future do stuff. And that's called scenario planning. And that's how we design. But back to this guy. So they look at him, and if they logically analyze, they will think, well, he came here with this boat. He's a precise signal. This is called the theory of signals. A precise signal is thing in front of you. 3 guys in a boat. 3 guys landed a boat over the horizon. Now, if I'm thinking, yeah, he probably has some friends over the horizon. It's undeniable that he comes from someplace. It's undeniable that, and intuitive, that these people have other friends over the other horizon. And it's also sensed that they come from a place which has land. Somewhere they're landed. Okay, so now I have a folding map. It's called a horizon map. Horizon, horizon, horizon. So if I plan strategy as an organization, I'm saying, to what horizon do I plan strategy? In Canada, we have a strategy group working for the government called Horizons Canada. So in Finland, there is a public horizons. Like I did a lot of work in Finland with scenarios for the government. So you plan two scenarios, two horizons. My theory is a bit different than this one, and I'll tell you what my theory is. Nothing of this stuff is invisible. Everything is present in that moment. This is Christopher Columbus. I cannot use hindsight because I've never seen it before. So it's a disruption. So I treat him as a disruption just like I treat Facebook as a disruption, just like I treat Uber as a disruption of the status quo. Insight doesn't help because if I don't have hindsight, I don't have insight. I cannot derive any kind of understanding from this guy. Foresight is the only thing that might help me get to some strategy if I'm assuming 3 guys means 1,000 in 2 months. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm alive. If I'm right, I have to get ready. Because what I see when I see these guys, actually I have to get ready for this. And that's exactly what is facing every organization. Because the problem we have is that these things are not over the horizon. These things are completely visible, but they are deep. They are deep dives. In other words, they are submerged. And when they come up, so if you look at the trending, anything trending is trending from the bottom of the ocean towards the surface. The surface is the mainstream. Get it? They are trending. My job and your job in the future in design is to catch the trend before it becomes mainstream and use it in the advantage of your client. When it becomes mainstream, it's too late. Because the thing goes up, boom, it's already too late. The market is formed. There is no way to enter that market. In the moment in which digital streaming of movies became mainstream, there was no room in the market for Blockbuster. Was Blockbuster today here? Okay. Did it went bankrupt here too? Good. Good, that's good. Okay. Timing is perfect. So, I'm talking about inspiration, inspired foresight. When you connect these data points and you take the typology of each individual or instance of technology and you understand what it could become when pushed to its maximization. So you ask this question, what can be possible when this is pushed to its maximum potential? What does this obsolesce? So, email, what does it obsolesce? Postal office, not in this moment, but at one point. Online commerce, what does it obsolesce? Enormous numbers of supermarkets, which are going bust in the States right now. Enormous, hundreds of malls are closing in the United States, hundreds. Amazon, on the other hand, is opening 2,000 stores in the next 10 years, but just for groceries and just to pick up, not to shop. So inspired foresight connects these dots. But how do I get inspired? How do I understand how to connect them? Well, let's look at the sources of value. Here is one of the most visible things over the last 7 years. The number is old. The number is 2012. Today's number is 4 billion people, which is over half of the population of the planet, has watched a video that nobody understands because it's in Korean, except for the Korean people, but there are not too many. So now the question is, why? Because this guy and his song, actually the song was making fun of you, just so you know. But, because that's what Gangnam Style is. It's about a lifestyle that he doesn't agree with. So he took over this whole thing because he could. And the reason he became so viral is because we are networked on a massive scale, and this massive thing creates massive social objects. So he was a social object, a thing that people talked about, a thing that people shared, linked, and so on. So social objects, now if you give them a social purpose, which is what companies are doing, and social media, you have a conversation economy. Who understood this immediately? A little company selling a little product called Red Bull. One guy goes to Thailand on a trip, loves the drink. Says, hey, I think I can sell this in Europe. Takes it to Europe, sells $7 billion worth. Then he says, I want to take this to America, sells it to America. In the meantime, in America, we have a company called Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, which are bottlers and distributors. They are not cultural operators. Red Bull is culture right now. Red Bull is not a drink. Red Bull creates events. Red Bull created the Stardust Jump. How many of you watched the Jump live on TV? Live while it was happening, right? So that's a social object. It has a social purpose, like I was there, I remember, historical relevance. So that's called the full spectrum experience. So these guys incidentally sell a drink, but they are a cultural operator of incredible magnitude. They create content, and they are the best example of one of the things I will mention later, that every company right now is a content creator. So the agents of this conversation economy are networked millennials. Networked millennials, they want three things. And these three things are valid in every single product, object, system that you create, or we create. They want to participate, they want to be engaged, and they want empowerment. Empowerment, we heard this presentation before about open source objects. The empowerment to use it and to change it is the thing. It has intrinsic value that goes way above or beyond the aesthetic value of the object. I'm not saying the object is not nice. I'm saying that the empowerment is what makes it. And why is it phenomenal as a sort of an intrinsic motivating thing? Because it's the core of what we are. We are about intrinsic motivation. We are about having the power to act on the because we can thing. So, I said earlier with Red Bull as an example, if you don't know enough about Red Bull, Google it and look at all the media they are producing right now, all the channels they have, all the sports they actually invented. Like they invented. Being the only sponsor of certain sports makes them totally dominant. So every company right now has to tell a story. It's no longer enough to sell soap, and if you Google Dove sketches, you will see one of the most beautiful 6-minute videos that doesn't sell soap, tells the story of a number of women. It's absolutely amazing, it's beautiful, and it gives you a very good example of how we create content outside the product itself. So we want what? Full spectrum engagement, which means not just engagement with a product, but engagement with a brand at every level of my life. Every level means emotional and intellectual. So if you watch Dove sketches, you'll see that it's only on these two levels, not physical involvement at all. So I'm looking at product, service, social media. Compressing the experience is what people value. We're looking at sources of value. What is compressing the experience? I want to compress the value chain. I don't want to go shopping. Is Amazon popular here? Well, Amazon one click. I don't want to go shopping, park, go in traffic, go mental, honk at people. I want to select from a variety of things, and I'm going to press click, and I'm going to have it tomorrow. And that compresses the experience. Another way to compress the experience is to buy an extremely old bottle of wine, which essentially compresses 25 years into a very expensive thing, but you saved enormous amounts of time. So, Senor, welcome. No, we know each other. So. But the white hair just threw me. We want to augment everything. So augmented everything is, yes, once we have augmented things, we're going to expect augmented things everywhere. So it's not that, in the same way in which we have multi-touch screens initially just on one device, now we want multi-touch everywhere. So who's going to rule this augmented world? Well, Google just introduced this 2 weeks ago, Pixel. Most people think they introduced a phone. No, they introduced a phone with incredible resolution, which means, and with this gizmo so you can see virtual reality stuff. Understanding the power of Google and the fact that they control YouTube, which is 360 already, and understanding the power of a virtual reality submerging experience, which you cannot really understand if you never had it. If you had the experience once or twice on an Oculus Rift, for example, you understand that there is no need to go to Paris. that going to France with an Oculus Rift trip is way more compelling. And I know it sounds totally silly, because you say, I want to smell it. Yeah, you will smell it. I want to taste the bread. You will taste the bread. It's about seeing, feeling, believing you are there. That is absolutely incredible. Autonomous everything. Again, if you read just 2 weeks ago, or last week, it was dated October 21st, so it's last week. TrendWatch.org, a company I follow, they have a trend report every month, and at the end of the year, they are typically right. They have 16,000 trend watchers around the world, so they are watching trends that are going towards the mainstream. They are really good at figuring out how to describe them, and all we do, and our students do this constantly, they monitor this thing and they map the trends, and all of a sudden you see that the last issue is dedicated to autonomous everything. It's called autonomania, wanting every single thing to be autonomous. You have noticed already that cars, at least all Japanese cars, all German cars, all American cars as of next year will have self-driving autonomous features. Some just for braking, some for lane alignment, some for parking and so on, but slowly, 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 your behavior is being modified to accept not driving your own car. Which means that, now go back to the history of humanity. Are we meant to drive? No. We are meant to have slaves. I know, it sounds really bad. Slaves to transport us. We are meant to go from A to B. To go from A to B. To arrive at B. We are not meant the in-between. So if you ask a group of people, what is the ideal scenario in terms of transportation? Everybody says teleportation. Teleportation is A to B, right? Like B. All right. Virtual reality is exactly that. Virtual reality is teleportation without the pain. Potential pain of reconstituting, your body. Now, autonomous everything means, yes, all of a sudden Tesla announces, I'm going to put Uber out of business. How? Because I'm going to have the largest fleet of owner-owned cars without drivers, driving while the driver doesn't drive. This is genius. Okay? This is pure genius. Just so you know, autonomous driving cars do not need a network of streets which are connected. And if you want to see how these cars work, look at Amazon at their warehouse to see how the Amazon robots work. They don't need they see each other and they are programmed not to hit each other. So the idea of accidents is excluded when you have this thing. But autonomous everything means autonomous everything, not just cars. This is one of the cars. It means mobility as a service, means I'm not going to buy a car. I don't need a two-car garage. I might not even need the streets the way we have it right now. Tell this to an insurance company, they collapsed. I did last week. The thing is, every industry that is hierarchic, it's a service to something else, it's threatened by things that they don't control. And that's exactly what's going to happen to the insurance companies, to the health insurance companies. Apple is collecting data from me every single minute. That data goes to my phone, from my phone to Apple. Apple sits right now on the largest health data on the planet, and Google too. And don't believe for a second that they will not use it to become a health provider of some sort. Why? Because data can diagnose you much better than any doctor can. And that is factual. So what could be possible? Here's another question. If every person, object, and place can talk to one another, this was the question I asked 10 years ago. What will be the subject of the conversation? Because if I understand what is the subject, I can pre-program the first layer of questions. In other words, I can give the answer before the question is asked. Did you get it, right? I can give the answer before the question is asked. Typically, when two people meet at somebody else's party, the first question they ask is, how do you know so-and-so? Right? Or where are you from? So there are probably 5 typical questions. I can have them displayed, okay? I can have the answers displayed on myself. I'm changing the question because now we are all connected. So the question now becomes, since every person, object, place is connected to one another, what will they talk about? So then we get into what design is becoming right now, which is taxonomy and ontology. Collecting categories of things that people do and understanding the meaning of things. So we get data, information, and knowledge, but based on knowledge, we don't make decisions. We make decisions out of wisdom when we understand where the thing goes. So transforming data into meaning, transforming information into purpose, and transforming knowledge into wisdom. If you look at what Facebook is trying to do by understanding you, they're exactly trying to do this. If you look at what Google is fishing when they look at your search strings, they want to understand who you are and why you are curious about this thing in the context of all the other things you are curious. And in the context of them knowing every single thing about your life throughout the day because they know every location you went to. Why? Because you allowed them. You gave them, actually, you signed your name, said to the phone company, please follow me. Correct, right? You do get phone calls, right? Okay. So, the question we ask constantly, I teach also in a business school, MBA students, second year, they graduate. I ask this question, what will be possible, what could be possible when objects become self-aware? So the question is tricky, because that's the whole thing with business questions. The question has art in it, not science. Most great business is art, because it takes the components of life, materials, and using the plasticity of the material, they transform this material into some object or space you use. That's art. Science is when you make the thing, when you build a building, but the art is what runs a business. So the question here is about the art of understanding a question. It's not about objects. It's about what could be possible in society, in civilization in general, when, at a time historically, when objects are self-aware. So it's not about objects. It's about how the self-awareness of an object will transform your life, your productivity, your schools, your homes, your streets, and everything else. So for that thing, you need poetic vision. So this is, we get into a totally different level of design capability, because poetic vision is not just vision, it's poetic vision, which means the ability to articulate that vision in poetic terms. Why poetic? Because you have to draw people to your cause. So if you look at how let's say a run-of-the-mill business leader giving a business speech uses business language. A great leader uses poetic language. And that is Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. Steve Jobs used only poetic language. He talked about the imagination, possibility. Elon Musk also uses a lot of poetic language. So read this guy's speeches to see the difference between leadership and poetic visionary leadership. So now we have network individuals, network objects, network places, new behavior space opportunity, which means a blank canvas. What do we do? So how do we know what to do? Well, we have to look at what human beings are all about. Who are you? What do we want? How do I enable a new experience? Well, I have to look at what motivates people. What motivates people to eat chocolate? Do we eat chocolate? All right, do we ever ask the question, why do I eat chocolate? Do you know why we eat chocolate? Because, do you know what that means? Pleasure. Humans seek pleasure by any form. Art is pleasure objectified. Beauty is pleasure objectified. This is George Santayana. He came up with this concept of seeking pleasure. Desires are actually an expression of this pleasure. Every single thing we do is in the name of pleasure. We don't call it pleasure. We call it something else. We call it chocolate. Or we call it coffee. Or we call it single malt scotch. Or we call it, reposado, whatever. It's not a drink for thirst, right? It's a drink for another level of being. So for a transformative level of being. Oh, so that motivates me. So I have sweet, I have shiny stuff. Why are things shiny? Because I want them to look healthy. That's why. Because shiny is health. A tomato that's not shiny, I'm not going to buy it. Softness. Do you know how you fabricate softness? How you take a cow and you kill it and you take the skin? Do you think the skin is soft? It's the most rudimentary, primitive industry ever that makes cow skin soft. You know why? Because you go, There is no logic, there is no measure to it. You understand? Human desires cannot be metricized. You cannot put them in a formula. That's why this is art. That's why Unilever, Procter & Gamble, these are companies involved in art, because they give you creams and things for soft skin, soft like a baby's bum. You know why? Because that's youth. And all of a sudden you realize, well, a second, Christopher Columbus went to Hindustan for what purpose? To get what? Pepper. Pepper. So then pepper does what? Completely changes the depth of stuff. So all of a sudden you say, life before pepper and life after pepper. Just life before the internet, life after the internet. These are different layers of existence, okay? And it's totally different. It's like before fire, after fire. Before fire, we didn't cook meat. No cooked protein. We are just an animal. Now we cook protein. It's amazing. So this motivating and basic things we rarely think about, but they're ultimate things. So the motivating desire starts from this Zulu expression, Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the reason Facebook is the company it is. And Ubuntu is the reason that a lot of, let's say, mysterious corporations that understood human behavior make it in a world of hard product by understanding a very simple concept. Humans, they read the book The Human Condition, Hannah Arendt. Humans are social animals. We live in plurality. Without you, I don't exist. So Ubuntu means me through your eyes. So right now I exist because you see me. What am I doing for you to see me? I'm doing everything I can. Facebook. Facebook is doing everything. On Facebook you are doing everything you can to make sure other people see you. So me through your eyes. Why? Because life is about leaving a mark, maintaining who you are, enhancing yourself, actualizing yourself, propagating your beliefs and your way of being, and it's all about the self. So when you understand that the self is the center of the universe, it's very important, but understand that the self is the self for others. The highest form of punishment for humans is not firing squad, it's solitary confinement. Because being alone is the tragedy of humans cannot be alone. Humans write poetry, okay? We write poetry because we can't fly, because if we flew, hey, let me show you stuff. But we write poetry so we can describe in poetry in terms of what we see in our mind, right? And we write poetry and we publish it, and then millions of people that we never met read this poetry. This is about the self propagating a way of being, right? So, Facebook distills humanity into its essence, which is the self for others. If you see the power of this thing, you understand Facebook has no limit. Like Facebook will rule the world, and you are responsible because you are creating it. So the question we always ask is, can you see me? Can you hear me? Do I exist for you? And in the name of this question, can you see me? Can you hear me? I want to leave a mark. I want you to know I existed. We built these things. This is not a house. This is not a church. This has only one purpose, to tell what? A story. What's the story? I loved my wife. Do you know how much I love my wife? This much. And if I had more money, I would have loved her more much, right? And the first mausoleum that was built in where Turkey is now, outside the, I forgot the name. Huh? No, outside the Bodrum. Actually, not outside, in Bodrum. Oh, sorry? In Bodrum. No, in Turkey, Bodrum. It's mausoleus. The wife of mausoleus built a mausoleum. And that's the thing. So, how is this called? Memorialization. We are memorializing stuff and our existence on the planet. What does Facebook do every day? Memorializes every one of you. You are actually memorializing yourself through Facebook. Facebook just gave you the tool. And you say to yourself, I never knew I wanted to memorialize myself so much. But now I can. So now, whoa, what does a selfie stick do? Exactly the same thing. You memorialize yourself in that moment in this location. So, it's not about the Taj Mahal. It's about you. It's about what we want out of life, which is to exist for other people. So now if you look at that as a design brief, that's a gigantic design brief. Now, to exist for other people, we invented the airplane. But don't take the airplane as being anything more than exactly this, a tool, so he can come here and give us an amazing lecture, which means to exist for others. So, we have 2 more parts to go, and timing is really good, okay, so I'm keeping my eye on timing. Distinctive competence, what do I need to do now if I'm an organization, design school, and so on? So let's revisit the current assignment for design. Leveraging technology into new behavior platforms. So our design briefs typically now are, this is the gizmo I just made. What can I do with it? That's the technology I right now have. What can we make? How many things, how many ways can we affect human life? In how many ways can frequency technology discovered by Max Planck, for example, quantum physics, can affect human life right now? It's a real project I've been working on for 7 years, because there is no limit to how many ways frequency technology can do that, if you know quantum physics. So anyway, and that's how it goes. In how many ways can I change? How many products? How can I extract revenue? How many ways of life? How many flavors? And develop strategies for product and service. So now our job always is, in the last 10 years, to develop a strategy. And I'll show you a model and how this works. So the old value chain, in which designers were involved only at the second step, so user need identified, designer was contacted, we need a telephone, we need a picture, we need a coffee jar, we need this. That's, let's say, 20 years ago. Then we have a development team, includes the designer sometime. Then we have making people, they make it, they manufacture it, they market it, they service it. And now we have user needs satisfied. Time to market, 12 months maximum, and what am I so happy about it? I know this user will need it, because I asked them, I did a focus group. Yes, no internet at that time, the user cannot look comparatively around, they cannot shop all over the world, so they will need that same washing machine, for example. But the important thing is, what do I need to know as a designer? I need to know, how did you identify the user? What questions did you ask? I may even press you, let me be part of this team, let me ask the questions. No. We have researchers doing that. So, slowly we start convincing clients we can do research. It's called design research. Because we have usability, we have ergonomics, stuff you don't know about. And the client will say, will this improve my bottom line? Sure, because it'll be more comfortable to OXO grips. Like, it'll be comfortable to people when they crush the onion and the garlic. And they put a smile on their face. The reality is not that it's comfortable, it's pleasurable, it's soft. So it's part of those pleasurable things. So what do we do now? The new value chain. Well, now we have to map the whole thing. What are the emerging technologies? So now the front end of a project is 2 years. Or if you don't keep a constant eye on the transformation, it's longer, but if you keep an eye, it could be much shorter. Emerging technology, emerging behavior, you map the opportunities. What opportunity do I map? I make assumptions. There's a formula, if you want, cross-impact analysis, and there is also an art. So we can use math and art maybe combined. I'll show you the formula, cross-impact in a second. So I have to make an assumption that if I have a cell phone in my pocket, there is a moment in the history of humanity, 10 years from now, when everybody will have a phone. Do you realize that 10 years ago that assumption was completely catastrophic? Like nobody would believe, what do you mean? This will be this cheap that everybody will have one? Yes. I don't believe you. Okay, don't believe me. But if you believe me, this is what you have to do. So the thing is, if you are wrong, nothing happens. But if you are right, companies are ready. So we define in the innovation phase, different than design. We define the experience, define the product, and define the service. Then you design it. And that involves design, probably a different kind of designer. So you see also layers of knowledge, layers of expertise, layers of capability, layers of management. So you see how companies need this so much. Look at IBM, they just bought a design company last year, Resource Amirati. They just bought it. Because they need design and they got tired of subcontracting design. Plus they need to sell design to other companies. Then we develop, make, and market for a much larger group of people, because now we sell to way more people than before. And then we reveal a latent behavior. If you go and ask questions, would you ever use a selfie stick? The answer will be no. But once the selfie stick was €5, everybody bought it. Everybody in Rome or in Pisa or in, so it's a location device, get it? You don't think you need it, and then you are in Venice. Oh, it would be nice to take a picture. Now, you want to give your camera, which is now your phone, to some dubious looking guy in Venice? No, you're going to take the picture yourself. So, 3 phases. We discover opportunity, making sense of trends. We expand it, so this opportunity can fit here. This is called market maximization or technology intensification. When the technology intensifies and everybody has it and it's cheap, this is what the map looks like. And then we have, we design business models. As a process, it goes counter time. In other words, we try to go as fast as possible, but tell our clients, this will eat a lot of your time because it doesn't move like a clock, it moves against the clock. So, we look at tactical agents, people, place, object, which are now enabled, come up with opportunity mapping, come up with a new perspective, because once you see the map I showed you, the perspective for every industry has changed. You cannot look at a new story from the old perspective. Then you come up with the compelling motivators, which desires are at play in this case, basic, ultimate desires, or manifest desires, the 3 types of desires. Then we write stories. Just close your eyes, I'll describe the boat, that kind of story. Then we take out of the stories the service or product described, so we come up with patents. Then we come up with business models, and then knowledge transfer, which is the last phase in which we give this information to clients. Our students follow the exact same process, and the results are roughly the same. I left some examples of student work with Claudio, so you can reference it. So cross impact, I mentioned earlier, works like this. It looks at probability. So if this happens, there's a likelihood of this happening. So it goes like this. If probability 1 happens, there is a 25% chance that probability 2 will happen. Now, the probability percentages are the formula. In each field, there are different formulas. You can read about it online. There are lots of formulas teaching you this. However, this is not a solid method for human-based science because it's like a forecast. We don't deal in forecasts. We deal in human feelings. So human feelings, the probability of the Facebook happening was 0 based on this thing, okay? But once people get involved, the probability is 1,000% because they can. So P3 has a 35% probability and P4 25%. Marshall McLuhan came with a formula many years ago based on 4 questions. It was called tetradic analysis. Take anything that's happening, any artifact, and ask, what does this artifact enhance? What does it obsolesce? What does it retrieve? And what does it flip into when pushed to its limits? Which essentially says, if cash money happens, it enhances the speed of transaction, it obsolesces barter, it retrieves conspicuous consumption, and it reverses into Bitcoin, or credit, or some form of non-existing money. So we have Internet of Things, linked spaces, enable people, objects, data, and data use, and that creates a whole ecosystem that. So those are different. That's a different map than the one I showed in the beginning. This is exclusive to the Internet of Things. We work right now with this material. Design became industrial when plastics became widespread and cheap, late 40s, early 50s. Now data is that material. So data is a material that essentially determines design agendas for many companies. You can tell stories with data. You can do a lot of different things. Enable data and know what it is and for whom it is for. You can enable spaces with data that tell stories and so on. Data can create new roles for companies. Aggregator of data. That's what IBM is doing right now. Aggregates data and makes sense of it. So IBM is the #1 sense-making organization right now. It's called unstructured data management. So they take unstructured data, they understand what it means, and they manage to sell it to various groups. Broker, which is another thing. Apple is a broker. It's also a creator. Advisor. Apple is an advisor. Occasionally I get a thing that says breathe. Because without this thing telling me I wouldn't breathe. No, I will breathe, but I wouldn't concentrate on breathing. So this says concentrate on your breathing for 1 minute. That's an advisor. And it's also an educator, and it's also a catalyst. So then when you look at all of these ways in which companies can extract revenue or engage people, then you understand the power of what looks like a product. This is not a product, this is a way of life. This changes you beyond what you can possibly imagine. So, what is Apple involved in with this thing? It's choreographing an experience. And what do we judge it on? Artistic merit. That's how we judge every experience. Airlines, they have a plane, and how do we say it's a good company or a bad company? It's on time, which is technology, but are they smiling? Is the food good? Is the staff dressed nicely? So it's artistic merit. So, what is the future of user experience in this whole thing? Well, the future is epic. If you don't design an epic experience that people talk about, like the Strata's jump, you cannot compete with storytelling with Red Bull. So let's go into the sort of final section of this. What are the new questions that companies are asking right now? I'll show you two real questions that were asked by real companies in the last 3 years. So Loblaws is the largest store chain in Canada, food and groceries and consumer packaged goods. They were rebranding their PC brand, which is very famous, is the #1 brand in Canada. 88% of what Loblaws sells is the PC brand. The question was, there were a couple of questions. We have 2,500 stores where 90% of Canadians shop. We are likely one of the largest communication channels in the country. So they had the insights to understand they are a communication channel. So nobody had to tell them. They are mapping their own thing. We are a network of connectivity. So imagine a grocery store telling you they are a network of connectivity, just like a bank might tell you the same thing, if they have the insight, with a potential yet to be realized. So the question is, how is the complexity of our business an asset? What business are we really in? What is the DNA that must guide our actions? And all of a sudden, these things cannot be answered without a strategy. You cannot just give a one-line answer. You have to understand the DNA part of it. You have to understand, how do I leverage the communication aspect of every store? How can I transform the store into more than just purchases of stuff? Targets. This question. We recognize that in order to be competitive, we need to innovate ways to make money. So they are not looking at innovating ways to retail or sell stuff. They are looking at innovative ways to make money, which means they are open to anything else. If you were a target executive, this was a question addressed to our students at the business school, not the design students, but the course is Innovation, Foresight, and Business Design. If you were a target executive, how would you disrupt your own business model? Very courageous kind of questions. So essentially they are saying, what could be possible? I'm going to end with a sort of methodologies we use to understand what the future might be like. And we like to tell and teach our students the future is not a mystery. The future is made out of components already here. Every single thing that will be in the future, in a reshaped way plus a new form of it, will exist next week and 2 weeks from now and a month from now and 2 years from now, but not used the same way. So the future is foresight, not forecast. The future is a choice. So what we do with the profession that strategic foresight, which comes from design and design thinking, is actually now used to future-proof organizations. And everybody wants to have a future-proofing report somewhere, so they at least they have an escape when Netflix knocks at the door and says, you're out of business. Or when Uber says, taxis, bye-bye. Or in Toronto, this is what's happening. Taxis are bye-bye, or will be soon. So the future doesn't mean tomorrow. The future means a move forward. So next Friday or next Thursday is not the future. If nothing changes, it's just next Thursday. And if the thing is, you need to change voluntarily, to change something in your own life to be called the future. The choice number one for organizations is to let the future move towards you. Don't forget, the future has these trending things. They are trending independent of you. So they are moving towards the mainstream. They're coming out of the ocean floor right now. And the thing is, allow that to rise and it's too late, or build yourself a boat and get there. So the organization is here, unknown future, time and uncertainty. The only thing I know is, I know what the trends are, and I know what the driving forces are. I don't know how quickly the timeline will be that the future meets my company. And I don't know, so right now, Ford, 2 years ago, all of a sudden said, boom, autonomous driving vehicles. And boom, they went to the Las Vegas Consumer Electronics Show for the first time, and the CEO goes on stage with the guys from Amazon announcing a partnership in which they put Echo, this Amazon social robot, in every Ford car, and they are making them self-driving and so on. And they declare, we are no longer in the automotive business. We are in the transportation mobility business. So mobility as a service, totally doable. Now the question is, so they were proactive. Choice 2 is what Tesla is doing, or Apple does, or IBM does. Take the forces, and Google obviously, take the trends, they are the same, trends change, but the forces are always the same. And understand that this unknown future can be designed if you put a big idea somewhere here. So put a big idea, autonomous driving vehicle, big idea. Electric car, solar panel, electric car, big idea. So you put that big idea there, all of a sudden you start writing some stories. Imagine when objects are self-aware. These stories are scenarios. The scenarios describe services and products. You create a whole disclosure for patents. Now you have an innovation strategy, and then you start releasing products one by one. When the Apple phone showed up, I wrote a book saying that this is not a product, this is a strategy. And I developed this map to show how this comes from a following process. And the thing is, once you see that product, you know the next year they'll introduce another one, and another 2, and another 3. I don't know if you remember, but when they introduced the phone, they did not talk about games and accelerometers. It was just the phone. So, now and again, you modify the process because the trending things change, and then you keep changing your plan. So, think of this. Every time you see an object, understand the planning strategy it comes from. And then you see its role in the strategy and what other objects might be in that thing. Now finally, business models. How do I frame my business? So I gave a speech to a transportation entity in Canada, Metrolinx, the largest. They're building subways and so on. And I told them, this is not a highway. We can't look at this and call them highways anymore. We need to call them something else, an efficient circulatory system. So they understand the systemic approach and the fact that we want this thing to move. If you look at this thing, this is not a drill. Because if you think it's a drill, you are missing what the drill is about. The ultimate benefit is home improvement. So can I call it a home improvement platform? Yes. In that moment, I operate at a different level in the mindset of the user, and I can start engaging the user into a series of activities. So, what do? We reshape the value proposition. This is a home improvement platform. Then we enhance, expand, and redefine the role this thing might play in people's lives. How? Now we have data. Now we can tell stories. So now a physical object can have content, information, and insight. I can learn from things beyond their apparent function, right? So now we have an aesthetic of relationships, not of form. I can expand to new layers of engagement. So I can go deep and deep and deeper. Multiple layers, sensorial, storytelling, visual stuff. And I can redefine in this way the value I deliver to people. If you think in a very simple way, this is very much what the thing called the mobile phone did. The mobile phone, which was initially just a phone, and you can, oh, no wires, look at that. That became the thing you now watch internet on, okay? And you watch videos on, and you photograph with, and you Snapchat, and you go, So this is a process applied to everything else, every single other product. Couple of new business capabilities have developed to this. The data-enabled organization. So irrespective of the fact that you make subways or you run the metro, you have 2.5 million people going through the subway, let's say. You know where they are and you know where they are not. That's data that's valuable. That data is valuable to somebody. Now, how do you make use of this? This is called revenue extraction. You are not selling anything, you are extracting revenue because you are selling this data. So who's in the revenue extraction business? Google. Google doesn't charge you any money, correct? Facebook doesn't charge you any money. They extract revenue, however, from somebody else. So that will be their model. So there are three options, all of them at the same time or independent. To become a context expert, So in this context, this is what you need to know. And how do I know the context? Because I have your phone, because you said follow me. So I know you are here, and I know what's valuable to you here. So right now, what's valuable to you here, since everybody knows you are here, and since everybody knows I'm here, and they know what the program is, they know what likely we are talking about, right? They might know what question you have, so you open your phone, and boom, my webpage shows up. Just kidding. But it could happen, right? Content experts, so you define, so look at what Apple does. Apple does all of these things. And conduit. So essentially, Uber is a great business model because Uber is a technology. It's a conduit. Uber will not exist if you didn't want them to exist. Uber is not forcing you to do anything. And Uber is not about taxis, it's about everything. So if you want coffee and you don't have coffee, but your neighbor has coffee, Uber can deliver coffee. And that's the genius of the idea, right? So it's called massive coincidence. We are now all connected, and now we can figure out, in this moment, who has what. Which means that in the long and short term, maybe, the future of money as the exchange mechanism is not guaranteed at all. And now if you read Bitcoin, blockchain, I don't even want to get into the blockchain stuff because it's very complicated if you don't know enough about it. How many of you know about blockchain? Okay, so Google it, it will blow your mind. Like, what? How about the deep web? Same thing. Much deeper than you think. So the current outcomes of design create compelling strategic value. This is what the design transformed itself into in the last 20 years. In my view, extremely successfully and extremely fast. Much faster than the transformation of design from sort of a service to industry to a co-partner in the CAD/CAM era when we introduced computers in the office and press a button, cut the tool in Taiwan. All that stuff was short-lived, but it was amazing. This transformation is of strategic importance, and how do we know? Jonathan Ive is the senior vice president at Apple. So that shows you where design is, and we've never been there. So in closing, and that's an important thing, hopefully to motivate your poetic vision, products and services are conversations between people and their hopes and dreams, and the thing that you always have to keep in mind, the dreams have changed. So I'm going to leave you with the lights off with a 3-minute video. If you can turn the lights off, it would be absolutely awesome. Thank you.